No, thank you, Marti, for inviting me.
We're
And
thrilled.
giving me this opportunity to share the joy of my Camino. Anybody have any questions before I begin? Okay, if not, then hold them for afterwards. So as we said, I'm going to show you a very brief 2-minute video, and it's just a compilation of a lot of pictures, but it's to set the tone for the more detailed presentation that will follow. That will be about 5-6 minutes. So here it is. Okay. Can everybody see the screen? Everybody see this? I guess you're muted.
Yep, I can see it.
Hello. Very rich valley. We're so the summit and very hill mountains of Montserrat. Climbed, about 3 feet here. And look at this. My thoughts and views. Right down below is Manresa over the bridge, and right in front of them, this is the town of Manresa. Okay, so that was just to give you a flavor for what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in detail during my presentation. Here we go. Okay, so just a little overview of who I am. I did my first Camino in May 2014, and since then I haven't stopped. So this is just like a little overview of all my Spanish Caminos, my Italian Caminos, and several other walks I've done in Scotland and France and other places. So the Ignatian Camino fits into all of these. Most of you have already walked on the Camino de Santiago or are planning to. So this is not new to you. I just wanted to show you in relation to, these are all the different Caminos de Santiago that end up here in Santiago de Compostela. I'll show you a more detailed map, but the Camino Ignaciano starts here in the Basque Country, about an hour south of Bilbao in Loyola, and it comes down to Barcelona. So here's a map of the Ignatian Camino. It begins in Loyola, which is, it's the Euskadi region of the Basque country in Spain. And it heads south. It goes into the La Rioja region. Then it goes into Navarra, Aragon, and finally in Catalonia to Montserrat and Manresa, which are near Barcelona on the coast. It's about 658 kilometers. And I walked it in October 2019. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of the Ignatian Camino. It retraces the walk of Ignatius of Loyola from Loyola to Manresa. And it was a period of his spiritual transformation. Ignatius was a very wealthy young man, aristocrat, but his family fell into bad fortunes. They lost their wealth. He entered the military. And while he was in the military, in one of the battles of Pamplona, he was seriously injured and could not even walk. So it was, he lived in the 1400s, late 1400s. It was during that period while he was convalescing that he began his spiritual quest. He realized that his life, had been too materialistic, and subsequently he walked. His goal was to reach Jerusalem, which at that point was the center of Christianity. But while he was still in Spain, he ended up spending about a year in Manresa, where he wrote what became the foundation of the Jesuit spirituality, something called the Examen. It's a spiritual guide. And those of you more familiar with the Jesuits, can probably elaborate on it afterwards. It begins in the Cathedral of Loyola, and this is the Cathedral of Loyola, and it's the birthplace of Ignatius. And it ends in the sanctuary of La Cova of St. Ignatius in Manresa in the Catalunya area. It's called La Cova because it literally was a cave. And this edifice was built over the cave where Ignatius wrote for about a year his spiritual guide. A little bit about my specific Camino in October 2019. It's broken down into 27 stages, but as you all know, stages are arbitrary. They may be completed in more or less. I walked much shorter stages than typically recommended, and I skipped some sections, and I stayed a few days in other places. But I was there a total of about 30 days. Why? Well, I just needed a new spiritual Camino. I had learned about it at the national gathering in 2018 of the American Pilgrims, where Chris Lowney, the author of the guidebook, spoke. It's a less traveled Camino. It was a new path. It was off season. I felt very safe and welcomed. And I now, after many Caminos, I long for less traveled paths. And it was, I liked the off season. So it was October, and it was perfect weather for me. It was very meditative. I learned much about the Ignatian spirituality. And I focused on that simple daily message. On the right here, and I think Marti is writing it out for you, I use these 5 questions as an example of how to meditate using the Ignatian guidebook. And it's very simple, ask God for light. It's very universal. Give thanks, show gratitude every day, review each day for its strengths and shortcomings. Face your shortcomings. Admit what you could have done better, and then look toward the future. Look toward the next day to improve on yourself. So I use that in guiding me as I walked. In general, there are much fewer accommodations than on the Camino Frances or other caminos in Santiago. I stayed mainly in B&Bs, hotels, and there are some albergues. And because this is a new Camino, many of the agrarian communities are hopeful that it will lead to a new source of tourism and pilgrimage. So many very small towns have beautiful little albergues. You just call the city hall or the police station, and they will take you there. And they're mostly donation based or very low fee. So any opportunity I had, I stayed there because I like staying in albergues. I was the only one, so it didn't. Yeah, I was not, in any crowds. So I recommend this Camino for those seeking less traveled paths. It is a little bit more varied and difficult terrain. And definitely you do need to use GPS tracks, not just the guidebook. You need to be better oriented with the GPS so you make sure you're in the right spot. These are some of the symbols and things that guided me around the Camino. There are arrows, just like the Camino. There are yellow ones and orange ones and green ones. And this down here with the sun is the symbol of the Ignatian Camino. And you'll see why at the end when I show you the mountain of Montserrat and the sun shining through. So it shows from the Cathedral of Loyola to the Montserrat area. I used maps, I used GPS, all kinds of ways to get around. These are some of the resources that I used. The guidebook by Chris Lowney and Father Jose Luis Iriberri is the basis for this Camino. It was recently updated, I think last year. It's very thorough. It shows maps, elevations, GPS tracks, preparation, history, and it even serves as a spiritual guide. Then there's a website called the Ignatian Way, and it's in several languages. And it contains everything that's in the guidebook, but then it gives you access to some of the authors. And there's an official pilgrim office in Loyola. And that Father Iriberri, who's one of the authors of the book, he conducts tours, guided tours of the Camino Ignaciano. If you're interested in not doing it alone, he takes groups. And then there's a Facebook group called the Friends of the Ignatian Camino, where you can ask and interact with past and future pilgrims. There's a credential. Here's the credential. And you obtain it in Loyola, at the cathedral in Loyola. You could probably ask for it ahead of time, but most people, spend at least an overnight in the morning in Loyola, and it's easy to get it. You get stamps along the way. And when you arrive in Manresa, you get a testimonium, which is like a Compostela that you walked this Camino. The food was very varied and delicious. So because I walked in October, it was chilly. And I love soups. So I had soup in every single region of Spain that I traveled through. And they were all very good and delicious. not the typical lentil soup. They were very varied, and so was the wine, and in general, the food was very good. These are pictures of some of the accommodations I stayed at, so you can see how they varied. The first one in Loyola, the Hotel Arrupe, is adjacent right next to the cathedral. And it's a very old historic hotel. Not fancy at all, but very historic. There's little castles, like this one in Legazpi was like a little castle, and so was the one in La Guardia. This third one, it was a truck stop. It was in a region that had didn't have. I would have had to take a taxi to or from some other place, and there was a big truck stop, so it was great. I could do my laundry, and I could eat dinner at 5 o'clock, which is not typical in Spain. You know that you have to wait until 7, 8 o'clock. But in a truck stop that's open 24 hours a day, you can ask for your dinner at any time. This was a quaint B&B. I highly recommend it if you go if you go in Genevilla. This was an albergue. This was actually an abandoned matadero. What is it called? Where animals are butchered. What's it called? Well, whatever. And then this is in Manresa. So you see the hotel here. It's built right into the rocks of Manresa. So the accommodations were each unique and interesting. So I'll tell you a little bit about each region. In the Basque region, there are 6 stages within the Basque region. The birthplace of Ignatius in Loyola. This statue is the statue of injured Ignatius, and it's iconic because it was his injury that precipitated his spiritual transformation. As you go along, you encounter several churches that have a connection with Ignatius during his walk. And this one is in Samarraga and Arancesu. And both of them, they're related to some apparition of the Virgin Mary to either Ignatius or to someone else. And as in other countries, sanctuaries are built over where those apparitions occurred. The first day was beautiful. Some of you may have heard it goes along an abandoned railroad track. And if you can see this picture, I'm inside a tunnel in the rocks. I will come out for a short period, enter another tunnel, and then you can see it comes out again. There must be about 20 of those tunnels that you go in and out of all day. And again, I found it very symbolic because one of my guiding thoughts was light, seek the light. And each time I went in and out of these tunnels, it was like I was in darkness and then I was in the light. And it just impressed me tremendously that I was surrounded by that light. The second day is one of the most difficult of any Camino, and it's the walk to Arancesu. It's a very rocky, steep climb for about, the overall distance of that stage is maybe 22 kilometers. About a third of it is very rocky, steep. And then to top it off, it was foggy and raining and with hail. So once I reached the top, which is this picture is at, there was zero visibility. So I really needed those GPS tracks to guide me. Then the third day, I was about to give up on the second day. The third day, it was lovely. And I felt like I was, a character in The Sound of Music in the hills of the Basque Country. Now I entered the Rioja wine region. And there's 5 stages within that region for about 105 kilometers. For those of you who have walked the Camino Frances will recognize this is Navarrete, where I'm having the grapes, and this statue is in Logroño. The Camino Ignaciano and the Frances overlap in between those two cities, between Navarrete and Loyola. And again, it's in the wine region. And it was very interesting to be walking backwards on the Camino Frances. People would be asking me, "You're going in the wrong direction." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm heading towards Manresa." So I had to tell them all about the Ignatian Camino. This is inside the cathedral in Navarrete. There's a statue of Ignatius. The section between in Navarra, it's only 2 stages for about 60 kilometers. There are 2 very long stages. I did not walk those. Along that area, the Camino parallels the Ebro River, and the Ebro River traverses about 1/3 of Spain from the Rioja region all the way to south of Barcelona. And a lot of this Camino will be along the Ebro River from there on. And I just took those pictures from the train. This sculpture here, somebody gave me permission to use this lady. It has a statue of Santiago going in one direction and Ignatius going in the other direction, just to show you the overlap of the 2 Caminos. I went to Zaragoza, and Zaragoza the Camino goes through Zaragoza, is one of the major cities in Spain, and it coincided with the feast day of La Virgen del Pilar, which is a huge, week-long religious, cultural festival. And so this is in Zaragoza. Very worth it. It may be even worth staying for a few days. I didn't stay for a day, or I only went for the day because it was so expensive. People come from all over Spain. I could only get a room for like 200 euros for the night. And I didn't feel that it was worth it to me too. And I had to book 2 nights. That was the minimum they would let me book it. So everything is booked way in advance. So if you're planning to be in Zaragoza anytime near festival time, you have to book in advance. But it was okay to go just for the day. I got to see a lot of the festivities. Okay, from Zaragoza, you're now in Aragon. There's a section of this Camino called Monegros. And the Monegros section, the way I describe it is very moon-like. It's like a desert with moon-like terrain. I did not walk that 100 kilometers. I was running short on time, and so next time I return, I will make sure to walk the Monegros. If you ever talk to someone that has walked it, it's very difficult. For the most part, people have to take a train among stages to get a place to stay because there's not many accommodations. But now I arrive in Catalonia, and there are 7 stages, 190 kilometers, and I walk from Lleida to Manresa, climbing to the Montserrat Mountains. So this is very rich, very, very flat and fertile. They grow a lot of apples and pears. Here it is. I'm having one of the apples that I picked up on the ground. And the towns are, again, beautifully and very historic. And all of them had wonderful accommodations for me. And this is my favorite part of the Camino. It's arriving in Montserrat. I call it like being heaven on earth. And Montserrat, again, it has very deep Ignatian spirituality because Ignatius received it was one of his very strongest awakenings happened in Montserrat. And it's this beautiful mountain. This is the silhouette of it from, two different angles. And you can stay there. So I strongly recommend that if you go, that you spend at least 2 nights just savoring its remoteness and spirituality, seeing the sunrises in the morning. It's a wonderful experience. During the day, it's very crowded. It's very touristy. All the tourists from Barcelona take a day trip there. But by 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, they're leaving. So you have the place all to yourself to, reflect at the church or in the mountains, whatever you want to do. And here's Manresa and La Cova. So this is the final destination. It's very emotional. It was emotional for me to arrive there. You can stay overnight here in the spiritual center, the spiritual retreat center. I spent 2 nights. People go there for week-long retreats. I was not part of any retreat, but they had room for me, and I just stayed there. And I shared my meals with some of the people that were staying there. And this here is the inside of the cave, where Ignatius spent about a year writing his examen. And there's also a church adjacent to it. One of the benefits of staying in Manresa, in the spiritual center, is that you can visit this cave at any time. You can even go down at 2 o'clock in the morning. And for those of you, who know anything about the Jesuit spirituality, this is one of the holiest places that, and anyone would love to visit it. And then you can't leave that area without visiting beautiful Barcelona. It's a very modern, historic, cultural center. Barcelona is, I usually am not a tourist when I go on my Caminos, but I had to take a day to enjoy the Iglesia, of the Sagrada Familia that's been under construction now for several hundred years. It's just a beautiful town. And last but not least, I wish you that you were granted light and that you ask God for light. And now I go back, this is a picture that I took. And if you see, this is the symbol of the Ignatian Camino. And this picture very nicely reflects it. So that's it. And thank you for listening. So now if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. Hello.
They're there. Everybody's there.
I
Carol and
talk too
Don.
much, huh?
Carol and Don, I think we're up first. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're
Yeah.
on mute.
Hi, my name is Carol Zeal. My husband Don Couts. We've not done a Camino, but we're thinking about it. And I just wondered maybe what you all would recommend as which Camino to do for the first time. We also prefer to not be in the midst of all the tourists, or to be. I've heard some of them are right close to the road and they're jam-packed with people. What would be your recommendations?
Well, I would not recommend this particular Camino for a first time, unless you have some real reason, real connection, perhaps with anything that I've mentioned. If what I have said triggered an interest in you, then by all means. If you want to experience the magic of the Camino that most first-time people experience, I really do always recommend the Camino Frances. And the reason for it is that it's just easier to navigate. It the infrastructure is there for you to go as a pilgrim much easier than some of the others. Study them all and choose them. If there's a region of Spain you're more interested in, if you're interested in Portugal, then the Portuguese Camino. It's really a personal decision, and you need to research a little bit about each in order to decide. Now, post-COVID, things will change. I don't know how they will change, but they will change. And so don't use too much our experiences from these past years for yours. And I'd be happy, in private to talk to you about some of the changes that I anticipate that will make it different. For example, the communal dinners and the communal kitchens may be disappearing. The ones that have existed in the past on all of the Caminos, but mostly on the Frances. And that's not a game changer, but it's something to consider. In terms of none of them really are overly on roads. All of them, have a good 60 to 80% off-road. So, undoubtedly you have to go through towns, you have to go through cities. This is not the Caminos are not meant to be hikes in the woods. They're connecting towns. And so you do need to crisscross the different towns. That's just my opinion.
Elena and then Carolyn.
Okay, so Rosa, I just wanted to tell you, I don't know if you saw my chat, that I did follow you when you were on yours, because I'm also on the Friends of the Nation Camino Facebook group. So I even commented a few times. You probably don't remember me.
I will look you up, yes.
But anyway, no, I just wanted to say, I wanted to add to something you said, but also I've only done one Camino, and my very first Camino was this Ignatian Camino, which I did in 2017. And I was planning on doing the Camino Frances, but my friend that was going to go with me canceled at the last minute, and I was afraid to go alone. So I started looking for a group, and by some, divine intervention, I ended up with the Ignatian Camino, and it was led by Father Jose, who is one of the authors of the guidebook. And it was my introduction to Ignatian spirituality. And now I feel like I'm a Jesuit. So it was an incredible experience for me. And Rosa, I wanted to tell you, because I heard from Father Jose actually today, coincidentally. In 2023, he is going to add the last piece, which is from Manresa to Barcelona.
Oh, nice.
That's going to be part of the walk, because St. Ignatius went from Manresa to Barcelona in 1523. So in 2023, it's going to be the 500th anniversary. And so he's adding that last piece.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that in 22, Manresa is celebrating its 500 Jubilee, I think related to Ignatius.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because he did his pilgrimage in 1522. So it'll be the 500th anniversary, and Spain is really preparing for that.
I hope so by then, that because it will. When I was there, you could tell that they were making improvements and really excited about that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add about the Barcelona piece.
Thank you. Yes, and as I mentioned, Barcelona is very much a part of the Ignatian Camino, and I was planning to stay in an Ignatian retreat center in Barcelona when I was there, but for some reason, I think I was anxious to leave and I canceled it at the last minute. Once I'm done walking, I really don't like being a tourist.
Yeah,
And all I could take was one day. And I said, no, I gotta go.
yeah. Well, thank you for your talk. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn, and Carolyn, you're on mute. Okay,
Hi, can you hear me?
yep.
Okay, so I'm sold. The minute you told me there's nobody on it, that I'm in. So my question is, you said you had a guidebook and you also said you really needed to have GPS tracks. So did the guidebook provide places? I mean, I know this is also going to be post-COVID and things will change, but for someone who goes, did you need to plan ahead? Would I need to call? Would somebody at that town kind of call ahead for me? Just kind of thinking some logistics in terms of how I find a place to sleep that's
Yeah.
not necessarily a top-notch hotel.
The book has a list of accommodations, and I used a lot of those. It is recommended that you book in advance.
Okay.
Okay. And even if they're out of the way places, if it's like a B&B type place, or if it's where you can get it, but you have to make these plans in advance. You can get a taxi to wait for you at the end of someplace, to take you someplace. Most of the accommodations and the taxis and the restaurants, they will speak English. So,
Well, I speak Spanish, so I'm okay with that, or enough to
Okay.
get by.
but yes,
Um,
you will be given email addresses. And what I did was I emailed ahead of time. Some of these places I was able to book on booking.com. They
mhm.
were very reasonable. October 2019, everything was probably 40, 50 euros.
And were they aware of when you booked there, did they know what you were doing, that you were a pilgrim, or were you kind of an anomaly?
If I did it on booking.com, no.
Right.
If I did it by email, yes, then I would
Okay.
identify myself. And even if I did it on booking.com, they give you the contact information and you can contact them yourself. And
Well, I was more curious if they were aware of the pilgrimage itself.
they
you
are,
know.
because the places that I stayed at are the ones listed in the guidebook.
Okay.
Okay, there were a couple of places I stayed at that were not in the guidebook. As example, I stayed in this castle that cost me 180 euros in LaGuardia, simply because I know a couple that went and they stayed there and they told me about this beautiful, cute little castle all to themselves. I said, I've got to do it. So I splurged. And that was not part of the guidebook.
Sure. And then the GPS tracks. So is there some sort of formal thing that you can download? And you're
Yes.
saying you just follow it even if you have no cell coverage?
Correct.
Okay.
In the website,
Mhm.
you can download them from the website. They're on
Got it.
Wikiloc. You've heard of Wikiloc?
Yeah.
Or else they're actually, you can download them just from the website itself onto your computer and then onto your phone. And then if you've used them before, you know how to, you can use them without internet.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? I do not see any hands up. Oh, John Skeeto. John, you're on mute. John, you're on mute. There you go.
Oh, I'm not. Just a quick question. I thought I saw it on Rick Steve's side, or maybe it was at the gathering 2 years ago. But if you stay at Montserrat, I believe it's free, right? I mean, it's just they like pilgrims there. Tourists aren't allowed there. Is that correct?
No. Montserrat is a big tourist destination.
But as
Um,
far as at the,
There is a hostel. They both have the same name, the hostel and the hotel. They're not free, but the hostel is very reasonable. And the hotel, it's called Cisneros. Cisneros was some famous guy, and I think both of them have the same name. The hotel is very much in demand because there aren't many accommodations.
but
So
where you stayed,
yes, I stayed in the hotel.
what about in that cave area?
Oh, in the retreat center in Manresa, I stayed in the retreat center.
Okay, okay.
Very reasonable. Again, not cheap, but maybe 40, 50 euros, including breakfast and dinner. So very reasonable.
Okay.
There's nothing free.
Great presentation, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Richard.
Rosa, I have a comment and then I have a question.
Hey, Richard.
How are you doing?
Hi.
How
Oh, I didn't
is,
recognize you on the screen.
how is the Camino going to exist without your soups? Yeah, when we walked the Camino in 2015, we would look for Rosa because we would know that she was somewhere preparing a soup, and she did this almost daily. And when you said the communal meals are going to go away,
I
I
know.
thought about your soup.
I know. So where's Carolyn that you said that you're going on your first Camino? Did she leave, Carolyn? Who was the one that asked about her first Camino? And I mentioned the communal kitchens. Mike,
No, I'm here. This is Carol. I was the one who brought
Carol.
that up.
okay, the communal kitchens, have disappeared already. Whether or not they'll come back is really up in the air. It's really not in the private albergue's best interest to have kitchens because they'd rather feed you and charge you, restaurant meal price. But yes, so Richard, I am going to be missing that. So Richard and Sherry, I met on it was my second Camino. Yes, it was my second. And we made a very nice connection.
I don't know if you heard, Sherry had to step out. She's in, we have downsized. We're in a townhome now, and she is in her first HOA board meeting.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you were in your trailer.
I'm in the camper in the back of the garage. But my question is, when you say you need to reserve rooms ahead of time, is this like 48 hours, or are you talking about, do you really have to schedule it out? How did you do that?
Okay, the time that I went was not busy. Let's put it that way. So I probably could have shown up and gotten a room anywhere.
Right.
But for my own peace of mind, and the fact that I plan out my day pretty carefully, knowing my limitations. If I know that it's a 25-kilometer day and I can only walk 15, depending on the elevation and what else, most probably if there is no accommodation within my walking range, I have to make it advance. I have to book a taxi, right? To meet me somewhere, to take me somewhere, either in the morning or at the end of the day to where I'm going to be staying. And therefore I need to know where I'm going to be going. So for me, it's become very important to book in advance so that I can walk within I call it my physical limitation. I cannot walk 25 kilometers anymore, especially with altitude. So I need to research it ahead of time. And also because I walk alone. I like in remote areas for someone to know that I'm coming. So I may call them a day or two ahead just to confirm. But it's more to establish a connection that, hey, I'm coming. And I feel like someone is waiting for me, as opposed to just off on my own with nobody knowing, where I am at any time. So I like being alone, but I also like to be connected.
That makes good sense.
Yeah. So if it was summer, places, may get booked. It all depends because these tour group, there are groups like, who was it that said she went with the group? So there may be a group of 10 people and they may be booking a place ahead of time. So you need to know if some place is all sold out, you need to know so you can find another place.
Anybody else? Yes, Marty.
Rosa, tell us about, whenever you and I chatted, you mentioned that you only encountered a few pilgrims. Could you share at least one or two experiences you had with the pilgrims that you did encounter on the Ignaciano?
I walked at the same time with a gentleman from Singapore. We never walked together. We coincided one day, and it was because I slept 2 nights in one town. And he was always a day ahead of me, or more. We ran into each other again in Montserrat because I had skipped some sections, whereas he walked every single inch of that Camino in the same 30 days that I skipped a lot of sections. So yes, there was only one, and this gentleman, he was very devout, and to him, he was doing his readings along the way, and making sure that he touched every spiritual site, and for him, it was really a very spiritual journey. I ran into one pilgrim, and we slept in the same hostel. And he was walking he was in Catalonia walking that section. I don't know what the Camino de Santiago is called there. He was walking towards Santiago. And I was, on my way towards Manresa. And his name happened to be Ignatius. That was every little town I interacted with the locals, and they were very excited to have people, visiting them and telling them more about this, Ignatian pilgrimage. It's almost like, I guess, in the beginning or before the Camino Frances, where it was a novelty. And so people do welcome you and are very curious about what you're doing. But there were no others. I did run into a group in Loyola, and they were also Asian, who they were on a tour. So they would be taken by bus, probably all the way to Manresa, and skip, and staying in, maybe for a week, skipping around. Again, very devout. So you will find very devout Christians, on this spiritual journey. But that was it. That was it. I really didn't. Once I returned, I met an American lady who she and her husband told me that they were a week behind. I was going to invite her tonight, and I forgot. They were a week behind me, and we got together and shared our experience because it was very similar. The weather and everything we experienced was the same.
Wait a minute, I just thought somebody had their hand up. Oop. Nobody? Okay, Linnea.
I was gonna just ask Rosa, do you have? an
Muted.
idea of the
Okay, hi, Rosa.
Hold up a minute. Hey, Linnea, hold up. Go ahead, Richard.
I just want to know that, do you have an idea of the total miles that you've walked on all of your Caminos?
Honestly, I don't. One of the things I asked Marty to say is that I have not written a book. I have no plans of ever writing a book. I look forward to my Caminos and experiencing them and living them. This is actually one of the first times I documented my Camino, and it was because of COVID. I normally spend my time planning my next Camino. So no, I have not tallied my mileage. That doesn't matter. On average, my Caminos, the more I do, the less I walk. So, let me just put, the last one I did was in January of 2020. I snuck to Italy and I did another, I did a small section of the Via Francigena, a new section. And I think, and I walked about 10 days and I probably covered 120 kilometers. So to me, it's not about mileage. I'm more about savoring them now and experiencing them. So you can extrapolate. I don't know. It
I love
doesn't
that last part,
matter.
savoring the now.
All right, Linnea.
Okay, Rosa, I was going to ask you about the Via Francigena because I did the walk with the group of 12 south of Rome it was spring of 2019, and we were planning to go back again
Okay.
in
So did you follow
2020.
the
Yes,
group of the Dodici?
You met people like Giuseppe and
Giuseppe and Franco and
yeah, so
nice.
they were just wonderful people. And I was looking at their Facebook pages, and I'm like, oh, there's Rosa. She got this. But so you did get to meet some of those people.
Oh my God, they were delightful.
Yeah.
Again, it was I went the first two, middle of January of 2020, in the middle of winter, of course, no other pilgrims.
Right.
And this Gruppo de Dodici, this group of Italian volunteers, it was just so nice. They actually, the first day they came out to meet me on the trail. So I have these 4 men, you know, and I guess they thought that I was a fast walker. So they expected me to arrive at 1 o'clock, you know, and here I showed up at 3:30. I was so slow. And then every single town, every day, they had someone come greet me, meet me, take me out for pizza, take me out for, you know, a drink, take me to their house, take me to their restaurant. So again, that's one of the benefits of traveling alone is that I reach out. It's not that they reach out to me. I reach out to them, and they embrace me, and I just take it all in, sure, because I need that company. I need that reaffirmation that I'm not totally alone. I had quite an experience. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much with this Giuseppe guy. I had veered off the road, the trail. I didn't know it, but you know, GPS tracks. It was so close where I was to where I was supposed to be. that I thought I was on the right track. But it didn't feel right. It just felt like something is wrong. This shouldn't be. So I called him up at 8:30 in the morning and I said, Giuseppe, something doesn't feel right. So I took a picture of where I was and he says, no, that's not right. So I turned back maybe 50 meters and I had missed a sign. And I was still so close, but oh my God, it was so dangerous where I was. But yes, so, having somebody to call, having somebody to when you need some help is very important, even if it's a taxi driver. And they expect you, then you're not cold calling, you're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to pick you up at 4, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning and you can't walk. We'll find you.
Okay, JR and Joy, and then Vince. You're on mute.
Got
There you
it.
go.
Okay. Yeah, we just had a question. As I mentioned, I'm an Ignatian spiritual director, and we're devout Catholics. And we were wondering, on the Ignatian Camino, are the churches open, and do they have mass in the evenings or early morning? Maybe. I know on the Camino Frances, a lot of times the churches were closed when we walked the Camino Frances. So.
There were open churches, yes. For example, at Arancesu, which is one of the key places, the church was open. I was able to go in, but I arrived late, around like 4 or 5 o'clock. I was so tired. Even if there was an evening service, that was like my worst day. There's no way I was getting, I was going back out for it. Yeah, they were all, actually, they were open. There was one in Vieres, I think it's called. But again, that evening, it rained so hard. It had rained all day, and it rained so hard that I was told they actually canceled the mass because it was Vieres. It was called Vieres. Well, of course, in Montserrat, I attended every kind of service. There was many of them, and watched the boys choir. That was just amazing. In Manresa, I attended a mass in the cave with only like 8 people. Yeah, it was very, very special. So,
Vince?
Can I add something to that?
yeah.
In the home of St. Ignatius, I got to attend a mass in the room where Ignatius was convalescing.
Wow.
All that time. There's a chapel in there, and that was one of the most incredible experiences.
Wow. I remember those. I think I attended a mass, in the cathedral. That was very special too. And but I remember that room inside the home that had like a chapel. It was amazing. Yeah.
Rosa, this is Vince. I was just going, Vince in Charlotte, you've walked quite a number of Caminos, and I was just going to ask if you have either a favorite Camino or a favorite section that might take a couple of weeks that some of the rest of us, even if we've walked a couple of Caminos, might not think about. Maybe it's a lesser Camino that's less crowded.
Oh, as I said before, I like them all. I don't have any favorites, but I will tell you about two times I've gone. Well, no, one time I went and I took a group of 4 friends who you know, they've been admiring my Caminos and said, Rosa, we would never do this on our own. Can you, you know, can we go with you? Can you take? And I took them. I was going to take them in April, this past April, to walk between Pamplona and Burgos. To me, on the Camino Frances, that is one of the sections that I really like the most, between Pamplona and Burgos. It's, I love the little towns. I love the flavor. It's not as crowded because it's not within the 100 kilometers of Santiago. So that's where I was going to take them. In Italy, on the Via Francigena, the area in Tuscany, anything in Tuscany, a week, 10 days in Tuscany is beautiful. And now one of my favorites is as, oh, excuse me, oh, who was it? The one, I'm sorry, the one who walked, Linnea, who walked the Via Francigena south. That's become one of my favorites now because the south of Rome, it's not, the Via Francigena is not popular yet. So it's less. It's the same kind of historic and beautiful scenery, but it's not this. Even if the Via Francigena parts are not crowded, it's less well known. I enjoy experiencing new places that are kind of a little bit off the beaten path.
That's great, great ideas. I still favor, as you said, the Francais is a spiritual and very scenic, very cultural first Camino across Spain, even though it can be crowded. Maybe another alternative for first Camino might be the, in Portuguese, from Porto up, the 2.5 or 2 weeks there. I don't know what anybody thinks about that, but that's a little bit less crowded.
Yes, that definitely is. It's also very historic, scenic, and well marked, well organized. So I really would recommend anyone who hasn't yet walked the Camino to read about each one of them and just see what calls you. Like Carolyn said, oh, good, you said there's very few people on it. That's calling me. What calls you? If it's a particular, if it's the wine, all right, if the Rioja region, if that calls you, then you go to, walk that section that I just mentioned between Pamplona and Burgos. Something has to call you. If it's the Basque region, if you want to see the north coast of Spain, if that calls you, go for a reason of something that calls you, and you love it. Yeah.
Marty.
Anything else?
Hey,
No,
I've
yep.
got my hand raised.
Okay, got it.
You calling on me, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Rosa, I'd like for you just to touch on your experience as a hospitalera, since that's part of your Camino experience. Would you mind sharing that with our group?
So I became immediately after I returned from my first Camino in 2014 in May. By November, I was taking the Hospitalera training course. And that January, for some fluke reason, I got invited to go volunteer in the Pilgrims office for a month. And at first, when I said I would do it, they laughed and they said, "Who is this lady that would want to come to Santiago in January for a month?" I'm like, why not? It was wonderful. Well, that got me hooked. So then from there, I by the middle of 2015, after I met Richard and Sherry, I was on my way in May to Bercianos to volunteer. And if any of you have an opportunity, Bercianos, well, I'm going to say the good old days, you know, you can have as many as 70, 80 pilgrims eating communally. And sleeping in beds and in mats and whatever, anywhere we could fit them. But it was lovely. It was just, you know, just, I like what I like about being an hospitalera is that it's very similar to walking the Camino, except you're stationary. You're meeting very interesting pilgrims, all kinds of people. Most of them are, I've had some difficult people, but it's because they were going through some difficulty. So that made them difficult in that respect. But it's just, you know, they're dealing with a lot of emotions, and you have an opportunity to really help them make an impact. So then a year later, I volunteered in Carrión de los Condes with the nuns, the singing nuns. Then I volunteered in Estella, in the parochial albergue. This past April, I was supposed to go to Grañón, which if you haven't visited Grañón, that's another very nice albergue. All of my albergues have been donation based or very, you know, Carrión de los Condes was not donation based, but it was only €5, almost donation based. Then, since I started walking the Via Francigena, I became connected with the Italian Pilgrims, and they also have very similar traditional albergues in the same style as the Camino de Santiago. And they go through the same hospitalero training. So there are about 4 or 5 donation-based albergues in Italy on the Via Francigena. And I volunteered in 3 of them? 4 times altogether in 3 different ones.
This is Vince. Let me step in just a moment. Linnea Hendrickson has put some information in the chat box. She has a slideshow on the Via Francigena del Sud, the south part. And if you go to the south, to the chat box, you can see her note and the correct spelling of her name. And she's explained how to search for her slideshow on YouTube there. So anyone who's interested can find that information in the chat box. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. I was going to mention, I haven't organized my walks, but if any of you want to see more about my walks, I've been posting them on mostly on my Facebook page called Rosa's Journey. Rosa's Journey, yeah. Rosa ' Journey. And you can go back and, you know, see, so you would look under October 2019 and you'd see, you know, my daily talk about each of these pilgrimages.
Anybody else? Any further questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosa.
If any of you have, you know, any other questions, feel free to reach out to me personally. Marty can give you my email, or my email is tumazos@comcast.net if you have any questions. Or you can find me on Facebook or on the American Pilgrims on the Camino, or personally through Rosa's Journey.
Well, this has been a great meeting. It's wonderful to see faces from out of town, folks we don't often see. This has been terrific.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you, and we'll see each other again, Put me on your mailing list.